Will there be a $2,400 increase in Social Security checks for everyone or not? Let's look into what they're saying right now. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Wesley. I make content about Medicare, Social Security, retirement, basically all the things us adult children are doing to help our parents navigate their senior years. Now, what we already know is that the US has already passed its debt limit, and we have about 120 days until that completely runs out. What that means is that the government can no longer borrow or print money. And regarding the two sides, Republicans and Democrats, they are not anywhere close to reaching an agreement on how this should be handled. We have the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, saying that she's very nervous how the US is going to handle this debt. And then we have Republican Senator Rick Scott from Florida, who has presented a plan on how to prioritize payments if we are indeed to default. So if the government runs out of money, essentially they would not be able to print any new money until Congress agrees upon it. And there are concerns that the debt limit may create a government default, which would then render the US dollar almost worthless and have us unable to pay back our debts. Now, as I mentioned before, Republican Senator Rick Scott from Florida did create a plan that would prioritize these payments if something like that were to happen. And the name of that plan is the Full Faith and Credit Act. Just to make sure that I get this correctly, I'm just going to read my notes of what this bill actually does. So the bill requires the Treasury Department to continue to pay principal and interest on debt held by the public, as well as ensure Social Security payments and prioritize payments to active military members and veterans. The bill requires the Treasury Secretary to notify Congress of any expected revenue shortfall, but raises the question of why the debt limit was not raised in the first place. Now, there has been a few solutions that have been proposed, and both Republicans and Democrats have solutions presented, yet they just haven't been able to come to an agreement upon what is the best solution to tackle this issue. Senator Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren presented a bill that would raise taxes on the wealthy to help solve the problem at hand. Currently, the Social Security system stops collecting taxes at a certain threshold. In 2023, that threshold is $160,000. Therefore, those making more than that they're basically capped. The bill proposed by Sanders and Warren would essentially either raise or eliminate the cap, meaning those making more money would be responsible to pay more money into the system. Now, the money that would be raised would go directly into the Social Security Trust Fund, and both parties like this idea. However, they just can't quite agree on how it should be put into place. Now, those making a lot of money, the wealthy, don't like this idea at all because they don't want to have to shoulder the brunt of making Social Security Trust Fund solvent again by paying more of their income. And the Social Security Administration did the math on this, and they actually figured out that it would put an additional $2,400 into every recipient's pocket. In addition, it would also add 75 years of solvency into Social Security. Now, another idea that's being thrown around is to raise taxes on everybody, just a little bit, 0.5%, maybe 1%. And by doing this, the same amount of income would be found into the Social Security Trust Fund. However, it's not just the wealthy who would be, taking the brunt of contributing to the fund. Regardless, retirees wouldn't be affected by this at all because they are already receiving benefits. This would affect those, who start working at age 15 and work all the way up until they retire. So it essentially would be affecting all the younger generations, not necessarily the ones who are near or currently receiving retirement benefits. And the other proposal is a budget cut. Now, a budget cut would happen if we become insolvent and can't find a solution before time runs out. And if in that case, what would happen is we essentially would have to cut the budget, meaning those receiving benefits would have their monthly income reduced. Doesn't necessarily mean that Social Security would not be around for the rest of us, because as long as there's a workforce in America, we are paying into that each and every paycheck. So we would essentially just, instead of using our savings account or our surplus, we would basically be living paycheck to paycheck as far as Social Security goes. And of course, those who are receiving benefits or soon to receive benefits are highly opposed to any sort of budget cut. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Would you be more willing to pay an additional 1% out of your hard-earned paycheck to help fund Social Security? Or would you rather that the wealthy who make over $160,000, or even if we increase that to a higher number, pay more money to make Social Security solvent again? Or the third and final thing that I'd love for you to hear your comments on is, do you just say, hey, I don't really care I'm not receiving it anyway. Let's cut Social Security now. And this would affect our parents, my parents, your parents, and those soon to be retiring. And this is all hypothetical so far, so none of this has actually happened quite yet, but will soon. But I am very curious to know how you feel on the subject. Now, for those of you who are like me, who are a grown adult who is assisting their parents with Social Security, retirement, figuring out Medicare for them, I definitely encourage you to click the subscribe button, because I try to produce content that does relate to my age group, my demographic, those in our 30s, 40s, and 50s who are trying to figure out not only our own lives, but the important stuff like our parents are dealing with as well. Because as we become more dependent on technology, this stuff is already confusing, and then you add technology and blah, blah, blah into it. And sometimes it can just be overwhelming. I know it is for my parents in a lot of senses, so I try to help as much as I can. In any case, if you did find value, I'd love for you to just click the little subscribe button in the corner. It means a lot to me. And in addition, be sure to check out the links in the description. I hope you can go and grab a copy of my book. It's available on Amazon. In that book, you're going to get 15 actionable steps on how to cut rising Medicare prescription costs. Until the Inflation Reduction Act kicks in the next couple years, we're going to start seeing pharmaceutical companies raise costs on certain prescriptions to try and get as much money as they possibly can before regulations are imposed. Now, if this is the case, you're taking one of those medications that has a very high price tag to it, there are things you can do to get that medication lowered so you don't have to debate between taking it or not taking it. I know a lot of seniors, when it comes to money, won't even take the medication if it's too expensive, because they say, hey, I can't afford it, just let whatever be. And that's really not the thing I would want for my parents, and I'm assuming a lot of you out there feel the same way. And also check out the next video right here, because it is going to have even more important information on this confusing topic. I can't wait to see you guys there.